We have a quorum with Mr. De Leon. There you go. So, and I have no doubt Mr. Krikorian will join shortly. So, shall we get this going as soon as everyone's ready? There's Mr. Krikorian.
Mr. Krikorian has just joined us.
So
Good morning.
Good morning. So let's do what we need to do technically to open up this meeting, and then let me know when we're ready.
We're ready on this end.
Okay, Mr. Lid.
We are ready here.
Yeah,
Shall I read the attendance? Call the roll.
yes, let's go.
Very good. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Present.
Councilmember Ridley Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Koretz.
Present.
Councilmember De Leon.
Here.
Councilmember Krikorian.
Here.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Lid, for reading the roll. I'd like to welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled and the first committee hearing of the year of the Energy, Climate Change, Environmental Justice and River Committee. I'd like to wish everyone a good morning and welcome to our first virtual Energy, Climate Change, Environmental Justice and River Committee's regular hearing. I am honored to be chair of this committee as we advance our collective and ongoing efforts to make Los Angeles a better, more equitable, more sustainable place to live, understanding our role in Los Angeles that we play in helping to drive the national imperative to achieve a 100% renewable energy portfolio for not just the sake of our city and its people, our state, and our country. I want to thank Council President Martinez for her exceptional stewardship of this committee and honoring me with this new assignment. And while there is no doubt in my mind that this is going to be a busy and critical year for this committee and its work, there are numerous initiatives for us to tackle as we build from the past work of this committee with an ambitious look to the future. Although the challenges are numerous, the opportunities at this time of change, greater awareness than ever, of the perils we face with the climate crises, the human and technological resources we have to address it head on, leave me feeling optimistic. I want to thank the many environmental advocacy organizations and the individuals that have been involved over the years that will continue to be critical to our work in advancing the causes of environmental justice, restoration, and a clean energy future. I also want to thank the women and men in our Bureau of Sanitation and the various bureaus that make up the city's Public Works Department, along with the Department of Water and Power, from the engineers and managers we work with to meet our moral, financial, and environmental obligations, to the women and men who keep the electricity flowing and the water running for all Angelenos, through the various, sometimes extreme weather events that we are experiencing with greater frequency than ever before. Colleagues, here's the big picture, current and future areas of focus that include single-use plastics, the just transition into 100% renewable energy, taking into account historically marginalized communities and the vast financial inequalities that exist within Los Angeles neighborhoods, green jobs that support the burgeoning green economy, how we can pioneer renewable energy practices working with our state and federal partners and the private sector in light of us rejoining the Paris Climate Accord. With the new Biden administration, we have significant new opportunities to advance environmental sustainability and climate change policies, refining our climate agenda along the way, hopefully increasing the rate of our sustainability goals as advances in science and technology become known as they relate to energy production and the way we secure, consume, conserve water, and discharge wastewater. I am very excited that this committee will now include oversight and support for the revitalization of the Los Angeles River, including my efforts at establishing a permanent revenue source for environmental restoration there. I have always felt that the Los Angeles River is symbolic of the overall health of our environment here in Los Angeles. It is what sustained our indigenous forebears for thousands of years, and through industrialization, it has been profoundly degraded. It is slowly, once again, becoming a gathering spot for neighborhoods along its 51-mile footprint. We believe in the future of our river. I recognize that we have a lot more work to do, as the new chair of this committee, I look forward to doing the hard work to make Los Angeles a cleaner, more sustainable, environmentally just, and spiritually enriching place for all residents. Lastly, I grew up in a state and a region that lived through and suffered one of the greatest environmental calamities this country has ever faced, what was called the Oklahoma Dust Bowl that occurred in the 1930s. The Dust Bowl was a man-made environmental disaster. We learned a lot from its aftermath. Eventually, through sustainable farming practices, environmental restoration efforts, and the creation of reservoirs and sustainable water practices, the state and the region bounced back. As a Native American, I was raised on the principle that water is life. It is this background and this understanding of the land that I was raised on that I bring into these proceedings. I am grateful and honored to be joined by my colleagues, Committee Vice Chair Mark Ridley Thomas, and Council Members Paul Koretz, Kevin De Leon, and Paul Krikorian. Before I turn it over to our clerk to call the roll, I'd like to remind everyone to make sure they are on mute when not speaking. And Mr. Lidd already called the roll, so what I want to say now is that in a moment, we'll take up to 30 minutes to hear from members of the public who wish to comment on items specific to today's agenda, and 1 minute for general public comment. I'll turn it over to our city attorney to explain the speaking rules to the members of the public who are calling in, and to our city clerk to provide the necessary information. But before you read those rules, Mr. City Attorney, colleagues, any of you like to say any remarks? Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to express my excitement at having you as chair of this committee. I certainly asked our council president to be sure that the next chair of this committee be someone that is highly committed to environmental progress and especially focused on climate change. It hasn't always been the case in the history of this committee. But I think you are the perfect choice for this, and I want to express my excitement at not only the aftermath of that appointment, but of course the environmental progress that we made in just one day yesterday, and the fact that there is now hope for the world in terms of having the time to focus on defeating climate change, and hopefully Los Angeles will be an example that other places can follow. And I look forward to working with all of my colleagues, a great environmentally focused group, on advancing that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. Pleased to begin serving as vice chair of the committee. Thank the council president and the chair for their indulgence in that regard. As my first official act, Mr. Chairman, I want to indicate that I must depart at 10:30 because somehow the committees are double booked, so I will do what I need to do, but be assured that I'm here first, Mr. Chairman. So that should give indication of my commitment to the committee that you chair. As you know, in the midst of a multi-layered crisis in this city, we are in a state of emergency. And I think we must act accordingly to address the pandemic and its domino effects. on all aspects of our lives, but I think it has to be immediately said we cannot let key issues relating to the environment fade into the background, as it's also timely, as you have indicated, and they have to be addressed with consistency, with policy coherence, and the degree of urgency as well, especially in the region that faces frequent environmental disasters as a result of climate change. Shout out to the new president of the United States of America, Joseph R. Biden, for issuing that executive order. First day, the Paris Climate Accord is on track within reason. But, Mr. Chairman, I think as we work toward preserving and protecting our environment in this new chapter, we have to do so considering and committing to what you've indicated, and I want to associate myself with those concerns: equity. Shall I say it again? Equity at every turn. And if we live up to our values and our ideals, the ethos of this nation, advancing equity, that is racial equity and environmental justice, they then have to be a priority for our work. I'd hasten to add that this has significant implications on the health and well-being of our communities, especially now as we confront COVID-19, a virus that we need to be regularly reminded of disproportionately affects people of color, largely due to what environmental factors that have compounded their very lives for generations. But we can change this narrative by creating what I want to say out of the box, if you will, an anti-racist policy framework. Because there's no such thing as a non-racist or race-neutral policy framework. We have to lean in broadly, deeply. You invoke the experience of the Native American community, the indigenous community. That then has to be factored into our conversation about equity. So I intend to continue all that I can do to advocate and to advance such a set of priorities and values. Got to dismantle barriers and construct those things that do make us stronger and better. This is a region that provides the basis for all residents to live a life of dignity and respect. I think that's honorable, that's worthy, is what we ought to pursue. And therefore, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, I thank you for the opportunity and look forward to serving on this committee and working with you very closely. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair Ridley Thomas. Thank you. All right, gentlemen. Mr. Krikorian, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me first welcome Councilmember Ridley Thomas and Councilmember De Leon to our committee. It's going to be a great committee moving forward when we have the addition of two people who are recognized champions of the environment and of environmental justice. And so I'm very pleased to welcome you both. And importantly, Mr. Chairman, I just want to reiterate the points that Mr. Kretz made about welcoming you to this new position. You have such a strong, demonstrated, proven record of championship of the environment that sort of goes without saying. But the part I really want to stress and why it's going to be so important to have your leadership in this chair position is that you have always been about accomplishment, getting things done. This is a committee that is too often, I think, vulnerable to hashtag policymaking. Policymaking or lack of policymaking that is dominated by press releases and slogans and announcements and symbolic gestures that don't advance the cause, the critical causes that we have before us in protecting the environment and protecting the globe, as well as at the same time we're protecting our neighborhoods. And you have never been about that. You've always been about taking the difficult steps that are required to make sound policy, gathering stakeholders, looking at data, analyzing solutions that work for the environment and for the economy. And so I'm very much looking forward to, and I agree wholly with your reiteration of the priorities of this committee. We've already made tremendous progress in many of the areas that you have outlined, including on DWP's movement towards 100% carbon-free electricity, including elimination of single-use plastics in many areas, and many of the other issues that you talked about. And I'm really looking forward to getting us over the goal line with real practical achievements in all of those areas under your leadership. So congratulations, and let's get to work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Krikorian. And Mr. De Leon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Krikorian, thank you very much for welcoming us to the committee. Very much appreciate your words. Very excited to serve on this committee under the tutelage of our newly installed chairman, Mr. Mitchell Farrell. I echo the comments about Mr. Krikorian as well as Mr. Koretz. This is a crucial inflection time in our nation's history. Quite frankly, the city of Los Angeles is the most polluted city in America for ozone, 10 years consecutively, according to the American Lung Association. When it comes to environmental injustice, the district that I represent has 9 major freeways, the 2, the 5, the 10, the 60, the 101, the 110, the 134, the 210, and the 710 freeways. So all that carbon dioxide, all that particulate matter 2.5, NOx, SOx, quite frankly, it was politicians. It was city council members. It was county board supervisors. It was state assembly members, members of Congress. It was state senators. It was non-elected officials, governmental officials, whether it's Department of Transportation or Caltrans. We're all complicit in saying we're going to design and build freeways in these neighborhoods. And in these other neighborhoods, we're going to build parks and open space and plant trees to sequester carbon and allow for shade. So how we view this through the prism of equity is absolutely critical, because these are subjective decision making, that has a profound impact on the public health outcomes of ordinary citizens. The very fact that the city of LA is 50% Latino, a good majority of them working class folks and low income and immigrants, speaks to the decisions that we make and or do not make. And that's why it's absolutely critical. Listen, as the author 100%, clean renewable energy and putting California on a pathway to the largest economy on planet Earth to legally commit itself to 100% clean renewable energy, negotiating with investor-owned utilities as well as our very own DWP, the nation's largest municipally owned utility. It is absolutely critical that we meet our goals and we develop our transportation electrification system throughout the city of LA, but in particular in low-income neighborhoods. So we have charging stations that are driven by clean electrons as opposed to dirty fossil coal electrons that DWP has historically been a part of, and actually for all the wrong reasons, a leader of, and moving clean, not clean, with dirty electrons from other states through our grid, which is quite frankly just antiquated. If we're going to really electrify our system, provide through an equity lens access to the latest, greatest, most innovative, greenest technologies, not just for those who live in zip codes, whether it be Brentwood or Pacific Palisades or Hancock Park, but in low-income neighborhoods where folks tend to buy older technologies because of the lack of financial wherewithal. We have to make sure that we build out infrastructure that is ubiquitous, just like gas stations. And that's why this committee will be a very critical committee as we move forward. So with that, I thank you very much for the opportunity to share a few words. This is going to be an exciting committee because of all the work that has to be done. The work that we have done, that we're going to duplicate. This is going to be a very busy committee. So I'm very looking forward to working with you, Mr. Chair, as well as my colleagues. as we move forward with a sense of intentionality and purpose to clean up the air that our children breathe every single day in the most polluted city in America, which is still Los Angeles, to provide more parks and open space. I love what you said, Mr. Chair, with regards to the LA River. You and I have worked very closely on numerous occasions on the LA River. I'm excited about your leadership. You represent portions of that LA River that have really, really progressed quite dramatically. And also, we also have Prop 68 that I wrote that we're going to get about maybe $800 million statewide, but a good portion of that money will be coming to LA so we can create the parks and open space, but in particular in low-income neighborhoods. So every single child, regardless of their zip code, deserve to have green grass that grows underneath their feet, not just concrete, cement, and asphalt, which has been the historic, unfortunate pattern of the planners of the city of LA. So again, looking forward, let's get the work done, and let's move forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. De Leon. And gentlemen, after hearing all four of your remarks, I am more fortified and determined than ever with your perspectives, your professional experience, your lived experience. I just think that that holds this committee in such strong position to make the change that this planet, quite frankly, demands of us. And so I'm more motivated than ever after hearing the remarks of the four of you, and honored to serve on this committee with the four of you. And with that, we'll now hear from the city attorney.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just one point of clarification. I thought I was delighted to be on this committee until I heard one of our colleagues, that would be Mr. Corian, indicate that there could be no hashtags that attach to our work. Now, if that's the way this committee is going to run, Mr. Chairman, may I be excused from membership? Thank you so much.
No, you may not. That's my first executive order as the chair is no, you may not be excused. You're too critical of a piece of this. And with that, Mr. Ridley Thomas, we will hear from our city attorney on information on hearing from the public.
Hashtag
Thank you,
get the
Mr.
job
Chair.
done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To members of the public calling in, when it is your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you would like to speak on. You will have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 2 minutes total, and 1 minute for general public comment. We will tell you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you are not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you are speaking on a specific agenda item, you will get one brief warning from me or the chair. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic, or again stray off topic, the chair will cut you off and you will forfeit the rest of your speaking time, and we will move on to the next speaker. We will take up to 30 minutes total of public comment. Please press *9 to request to speak. As soon as you hear someone address you on the phone, please press *6 and state your name and state which agenda items you would like to speak on. We know the situation is not ideal, and thank you for your cooperation as we do the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. We appreciate the instructions. And with that, we are ready to take our first public comment.
Caller with the phone number ending 7004. Please press *620. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Amanda Pantoja, and I'll be speaking on item 1.
Hello, thanks for calling in, Amanda. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I'm an organizer with Food and Water Watch and also a resident of Southeast LA. Really appreciate the time to speak at this committee. And just commenting on the potential retrofit of the Valley facility, I want to urge the committee to consider the implication of funding the development of any oil and gas facilities at this moment when we're supposed to be on track to phasing out fossil fuels. Our state and even a lot of local cities are shifting, with our governor last year just announcing the goal to phase out gas-powered cars by 2035. So the money should be going instead to benefit our transition to clean energy, like building out local solar and helping LEDWP customers. We need to invest smart, especially when our resources are really tight right now due to the coronavirus. So I just want to ask the committee to please consider what's best for our city's future and not these short-term solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And our next caller, please.
Mr. Chair, there are no more speakers in the queue.
All right. Well, thank you. So that brings us to our first item. I was planning on moving items 1 through 3 on consent, but I understand Mr. you have something to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I have a number of concerns. I know we've been looking for customers to use our recycled water to help us meet our regulatory discharge requirements. And I'm glad to see that we've made progress on that front. But financially incentivizing the refinery to use the recycled water give me some concerns, since it may seem like we're subsidizing cheap oil, which the general public may not necessarily believe is the best use of ratepayer funds at this point in climate history. Certainly, we're at a significant moment, as we've noted, as we just began a new administration with their rejoining the Paris Accords and many other steps they'll be taking in the future. We are shortly about to begin the creation, finally, of a climate emergency mobilization office in our own city. And if we're going to get into this kind of agreement with the refinery, I want to know some more details about it and really think through and work through the implications. So I have a few questions.
Okay, Mr. Chris, before you do, let's have Mr. Lidd read the item, and then we'll make DWP available to answer questions.
Okay.
Great.
Item number 1, Board of Water and Power Commissioners and CAO reports and resolution number 021.
Mr. Chair, this is Ralph Theoprado with the CLA's office. Would you like me to read the item or
Authorize.
My apologies. Yes, please.
No, certainly not a problem.
All right.
Item number 1, Mr. Chair, members, relates to DWP and CAO reports relative to authorizing DWP to execute an agreement with Ultramar regarding advanced treated recycled water service at the Valero Wilmington refinery. Completes the matters.
All right. Do we have DWP officials at the ready to answer some questions?
Yes, sir, council member. Mr. Paul Liu will be available to answer questions on this item.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Liu. Mr. Koretz, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The retrofit is estimated at a cost of $5 million, and I know DWP is budgeted around $6 million. So we know that so many of our projects in the city often have overruns. So how can we be certain that the retrofit won't actually cost $7 million or more? And if it does go over cost, is DWP on the hook for the full dollar amount? Or can we be assured that Ultramar will pay some of that difference? How is that structured?
Thank you, Councilmember Koretz. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Paul Liu, manager of the water cycling section here at LEDWP and the water system. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about our agreement. In specific, to answer your question, Councilmember Koretz, we are capped at that amount in the agreement. So any overrun there would be picked up by Valero. And so it may be beneficial, Council Member and Mr. Chair, if I can maybe give a little background of the agreement. I certainly hear the concerns of our public and the questions that's come up. So if I may, let me go ahead and kind of share a little bit more about this agreement and the benefits.
Yes, Mr. Liu,
City.
please do go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason why we're here today is just a little background. Every single recycled water customer has to have an agreement with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power per rate agreement. And since this is going to be a 10-year agreement with 2 10-year extensions for a total of 30 years, we are here at this committee and ultimately to City Council, and that's the reason why we're here today for our agreement. And so a little background, Valero is one of the large industrial customers down in the harbor area. And by taking this recycled water, they will be offsetting up to 1,000 acre feet of imported purchase water that we have to buy, that we don't have to buy anymore, because we can offset it with our advanced treated recycled water that our LA Sanitation is currently producing down in the harbor. And so this will help LA Sanitation meet their goal, a regional board order to cease discharge to the harbor by 2020. And this is one of the customers that we have to sign up to use the water. 1,000 acre feet, council members, is enough water for 12,000 Angelinos. And so that's the amount of water savings we'll have by utilizing this recycled water. Now, in terms of the cost, yes, I understand the concerns, but let me, if I may, discuss the benefits of how we structured the rates. Typically, our recycled water customer pays about 30 to 40% of the potable rate. That's within our ordinance for the regular Title 22, if I can call it that, the recycled water for the grass. But what the ordinance allows us to do is for advanced treated water, which is the higher quality that we're producing at Terminal Island, we can negotiate a higher rate. So in essence, what Valero has agreed to pay for is they're paying 95% of the potable rate for this recycled water, as opposed to the 30 to 40% that a regular recycled water customer will be paying. We will be generating around $29 million in revenue over the first 10 years. So we figured the cost payback for the $6 million for the on-site retrofit, we're going to be getting that back really quickly within the agreement. And then that agreement continues for another 20 years after the 10-year period. So we really see this financially as a benefit. This is Valero stepping up. They realize the value of this water. They realize that they want to do the right thing in terms of helping the environment from the water perspective. But bottom line is, from a cost perspective, this agreement makes sense for us. And by the way, we do have, our board did pass a few years ago a capital incentive program to where we do help offset the cost of conversion to recycled water in exchange for a higher rate so that the finances make sense. So in essence, we're going to be able to recoup that $6 million back really quickly as we collect the money as they come online. And they're committed to getting their on-site retrofit done within 18 months after council approval. So they will be the first large private industrial customer in the city on recycled water. And that helps meet our Green New Deal goals also, as outlined in the Green New Deal. So sorry, Mr. Chair, if that's a little long-winded. Hopefully I've answered some of the basic questions. I'm ready to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Chris, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I still have a few. One is it's 95% of their regular rate. How discounted is their regular rate? What do we charge compared to smaller size customers?
Councilman Chris, great question. They're on our commercial rate. I don't believe there's much of a difference between a commercial rate and a residential rate. It's just in the way it's structured. Currently, I think it's around $5.16 per HCF. So they'll be paying 95% of that. So they're simply getting a 5% discount, which is not much at all. And so quite frankly, we're very surprised that we were able to kind of negotiate this deal. But I think it speaks to their effort in wanting to go green, in wanting to help with the environment, in offsetting imported purchased water, saving all the carbon footprint, that you would have to bring the water across the Tehachapi's down here, and using this wonderful local water supply that we have.
Mr. I'm going to lean in real quick here. Mr. Liu, what do you know about Valero's quest or mission to go green? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've worked with them for the past, 10, 20 years, even before I got to the group here. And they do want to go to recycled water. not just because, from a financial perspective, but certainly they realize the value in the carbon footprint savings. And so they do have a group there that is very much, at least on the water side, very focused and in tune with our Green New Deal and our goals of meeting the water supply objectives.
Thank you, Mr. Kretz, for the indulgence. I'm aware that Valero is not exactly, doesn't have a distant past history of actually being environmentally friendly partners in other ways. So I was just curious to see this sort of shift in their approach to business practices. So thanks for indulging me. Mr. Kretz, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know they are also prioritized and I believe guaranteed access to the recycled water during drought. So if they get the priority, who winds up not getting the priority? Where do we lose access to water, and are they the highest priority for our recycled water use?
Councilman Caressa, again, another great question. If I can answer that within the context of the supply that comes out of our Terminal Island treatment plant currently that's producing this water down there, they can produce up to about 11 million gallons per day of advanced treated recycled water. Again, little information. They are under a regional board order to cease discharge of water into the harbor there. And so what the city got into back in the early 90s was, well, one way to do it is build advanced treatment and find a place for the entire flow inland. So our plan right now is to split the water between 3 customers. The Water Replenishment District is currently taking the majority of that water for seawater barrier. Valero will be the second customer that takes about 1,000 acre feet. And then the third customer, we are in discussions right now, another large industrial customer to take the rest of the water. So to answer your question, there's the plane is not overbooked right now. We have room on the jet. And so they will help us actually take this water to help sanitation and us meet the goals of not discharging this water out to the ocean. So there's currently not an overbooking of the flight, if I can use that term. But what we're trying to do is once we hook them on, and if we can get this other large industrial customer, we will be sold out of Terminal Island. They will then meet the regional board order, and all 3 customers will be able to get recycled water. Now, if I may, there's going to be other customers down there, other refineries that are interested now, because Valero is the first one, and this is the change that we're seeing in the thinking. We are certainly talking to the Metropolitan Water District and LA County saying, you may have heard of the Regional Recycled Water Program. We will then need to secure another source of water to offset the other potable uses from another program such as that. But to answer your question, the plane is not overbooked right now. There's plenty of seats, and they will take a portion of that to be able to help us to meet that goal.
And my understanding is that this will be divided into 10-year segments for reapproval, so that it's certainly many people's hope that we won't be refining oil 30 years from now. And so we're not committing to that 30 years in one bite, but it's 3 10-year segments.
Councilmember Correct, you're absolutely correct. We had that in mind. And that's why it works for both, to where we know we will recoup our $6 million really quickly up front, and then we're going to generate extra revenue from the rest of the 10 years. And then after 10 years, each of us would have the right to say, you know what, this doesn't work for us anymore. We can terminate the agreement. At that point, we would have already made the extra money on this deal that can fund other programs within the city to be able to help us meet our goals. So absolutely right. That's how we've set it up that way in 3 10-year agreements.
Well, thank you. And I apologize, Mr. Chair, but I'm going to have to hop off for a few minutes for another meeting. Hopefully I hop back on in time for the tail end of this discussion.
That's fine. We might be wrapping up this discussion, though, Mr. Kretz, but I am going to ask a question or two myself. So we welcome you back momentarily. Mr. Liu, if you could, in layman's terms, express to everyone listening what the environmental benefit is to this agreement, regardless of deadlines and the minutia of the details.
Absolutely. What I see is, if I can summarize, three main perspectives, and hopefully I can explain this clearly. Number one, this supports local water supply. Bottom line, because right now we are buying water, imported purchased water, which only goes up, and that creates a huge carbon footprint, as we all know. And so it supports our local water supply, which is wonderful. As you know, Mr. Chairman, and all the council members are very hopefully familiar with that. The second thing here is it ceases discharge to the ocean, which has a benefit. So we have that point there. And number three, tying everything back to sustainability and resiliency. When you have that local supply, you have more local control over where your water comes from. And it just so happens in this case, we have a willing partner that's willing to pay a higher rate that benefits us financially also. So those would be the top 3 or 4 key reasons, Mr. Chairman, that I would say is the benefit to an agreement like this.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. And then just lastly for my question, and then we can move on. I think Mr. Krikorian might have a question as well. But the department subsidized Ultramar, as you mentioned, up to $6 million to make facility retrofits to accommodate the use of this recycled water. What is the department's recourse for these funds in the event they cannot complete the agreement terms? And what do you think the chances of that are, if any? And what are the consequences if they cannot complete the agreement?
Thank you. If I can start with answering your second question, I think the chances of them not coming through are slim to none, quite frankly. We've been working with them for a while. They're super excited. They even spoke at our board when the item went across there to say, hey, we want to be the first one. We want to be the poster child here in LA to be the first one. Now, what we do have an agreement is that if for whatever reason they don't complete or they don't take the recycled water, there is a prorated schedule where they will pay us back the money within the first 10 years. So we have that all worked out in there. It took us a while, but we were able to get all those stipulations put in there. But if I can say, I know they're not here with us today, but we have a call with them this afternoon. Assume that it goes well. They are totally on board with this. Again, we have some refineries in the Southland on recycled water, the Chevrons and the Exxons and other parts of the county that are not in the city. So this is nothing new for our area, but they will be the first customer, and I think that means a lot to them.
Thank you. Mr. Krikorian or Mr. De Leon, any questions? Mr. Krikorian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Liu. I think my questions have pretty much been answered. I'm actually really excited about this partnership. I think, I have the same reservations that Mr. Kretz raised, of course, in having a partnership with any oil refinery, but this makes so much sense for DWP and for the environment and for LA sanitation. It's just, in every respect, it makes sense. This state uses about 20% of its electricity load to deal with moving and treating water. And when we can keep this much water that would otherwise be wastewater in basin and avoid having to import water and massively increase our carbon footprint in order to do so, the environmental benefit of this seems to me quite obvious. And finding a large consumer of recycled water like this is not the easiest thing in the world, because the hydrology has to be right and they have to be positioned in the right way relative to the source of the recycled water and so on. So that we have found this, and that it will pay back so quickly, and that it will actually have significant, in my view, net environmental benefits is really very promising. And I hope that we can soon find similar arrangements with large users of the outflow from Hyperion and from Tillman, and utilize much, much more of the recycled water that is now absurdly being dumped in the ocean. It's absurd that in 2021, we are still dumping this incredibly valuable, vital resource into the ocean when we could be using it for so many other really important uses, including eventually recharging our groundwater to a much more significant level than we are now. So this is a good start. I hope there's much more to come.
Great point, Mr. Krikorian. Thank you. And with that, I think that we can move this item forward, especially if Mr. De Leon is in agreement. That means we have majority on the committee pending Mr. Koretz's return. This item will move forward then as is. And Mr. Liu, thank you for your work on this. Thank you to the department for your great work on this.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
You bet. And then, so that brings, and so I suppose we need to call the roll. So we'll get it on the record.
Yes, sir. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Mr. Lidd, you might be on mute. There we go.
Okay. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ridley Thomas. Okay. Councilmember Koretz. Councilmember De Leon.
Aye.
And Councilmember Krikorian.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 2 and 3, which I am going to move that we advance on consent without objections.
Second.
All right. Well, then that completes today's agenda, but we'll call the roll first for those 2 items.
Very good. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ridley Thomas. Councilmember Koretz. Councilmember De Leon.
Aye.
And Councilmember Krikorian.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Lidd. Thank you, gentlemen. And do we have any other items before us?
That clears the desk, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lidd. Everyone, thank you so much. We will have a robust agenda at the next meeting of this committee, and I thank everyone for their time, efforts, and your comments. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone.